The thermal footage shows more than just a beast. It captures the thing standing right outside my tent, mimicking my son's cry. But in those first few seconds, as the pixelated image began to form on my tablet screen, I did not understand what I was looking at. All I saw was hope. Stupid, toxic, suicidal hope, for the sake of which I had broken every protocol, cut through the perimeter fence, and entered the sector the Rangers had been calling the dead zone for 6 months. My son's name was Leo. He was 8 when he vanished during a field trip on the outskirts of the Whispering Ridge Reserve. The search lasted 2 weeks. Choppers, K9 units, volunteers, all useless. The woods just swallowed him whole. The official report read, accidental death, likely fall into a crevice, remains unrecovered. But I'd been search and rescue for 15 years. I knew what it looked like when the forest took people. It usually left a receipt, a scrap of a jacket, a snapped branch, a scent. Here, there was only a sterile void. So I went back. I was humping 40 pounds of gear. My main weapon was not a rifle. They'd confiscated that when I was discharged for psychological instability, but an experimental long-range FLIR X90 camera, a prototype I'd frankly stolen from the SAR supply locker. This thing could pick up the heat signature of a field mouse under 3 feet of snow from half a mile out. If Leo was out there, if he was drawing even a single breath, I was going to see him. The weather was turning. The Colorado sky was heavy with lead, and the temperature dropped with every meter of elevation. The radio clipped to my pack strap crackled to life, cutting through the static. "Mark, I know that's you." Miller's voice, the senior ranger, sounded distorted but hard. "Perimeter sensors tripped in Sector 3. Get out of there. There's a blizzard coming in, upgraded to storm category. You'll be dead by midnight." I stopped, steadying my breathing. Steam plumed from my mouth in thick clouds. Around me, ancient fir trees stood covered in frost, like frozen sentinels. The silence here was unnatural, dense, pressing against my eardrums. "I heard him, Miller," I replied, barely recognizing my own voice. It was raspy and dry. A week ago, when we swept Grid B4, I heard Leo's voice. That was an echo, Mark. Or wind in the canyon. Or your brain refusing to let go. Turn around. We are not sending a team after you in this weather. I do not need a team? I killed the radio. That was my choice. The point of no return. I knew the forecast. I knew it would drop to 30 below tonight. But I also knew that in weather like this, when normal predators hunkered down in their dens, something strange happened in Whispering Ridge. All the disappearances happened right before the storms. I pitched camp on a small plateau sheltered by a rock overhang. It was a professional-grade assault tent, built to withstand hurricane-force winds. But right then, it felt as thin as paper. Most of my time went into setting up the tripod and calibrating the camera. I aimed the lens toward the dense underbrush, right where the trail fell away into the blackness of the ravine. I mounted the tablet inside the tent. The screen glowed with the soothing green light of the interface. I sat in my sleeping bag, arms wrapped around my knees, watching the telemetry numbers. -22 outside. No wind yet, but the pressure was dropping like a stone. An hour passed in silence, then a second. My eyelids grew heavy. I'd almost convinced myself that Miller was right, that I was just an old fool driven mad by grief. And then I heard it. At first, it was just a sound, barely perceptible on the edge of hearing, a like a dry branch scratching against the nylon of the tent. But there was no wind. I froze, holding my breath. The sound came again, closer. Dad? Blood rushed to my head so hard, my vision dimmed. It could not be true. It was impossible. The voice was quiet, trembling with cold, so familiar that my heart skipped a beat. Dad, I'm cold. I lunged for the exit, my fingers finding the zipper pull. I was ready to tear out into the night, jacketless, weaponless, chasing nothing but the sound. But professional instinct, hammered into me by years of training, fired faster than my emotions. Rule number 1, assess the situation. I snapped my eyes to the tablet. The camera, set up 30 feet from the tent, was broadcasting in black hot mode. Hot objects appeared black against a white background. In the center of the frame, standing directly in front of my tent entrance, was a black figure. But it was not a child. I snatched my hand back from the zipper as if it were white hot. My body went rigid, my mind struggling to reconcile two impossible realities. My ears heard the voice of my 8-year-old son standing 3 feet away, just behind the thin fabric. But my eyes saw a monster on the screen. The creature was massive. Even hunched over, its silhouette towered above the tent. Its heat signature was wrong, patchy and mottled, as if the warmth was distributed unevenly across its body. Long, unnaturally thin limbs hung down almost to the ground. It stood absolutely motionless, not shifting its weight the way animals do in the freezing cold. It was waiting. Dad, why are not you opening up? Leo's voice cracked into a sob. It's dark out here. I started to shake. Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot and angry. Every word spoken in that voice sliced through me. I wanted to scream, to rip the tent open, to fire my flare gun into the thing, but I knew one sudden move and I was dead. Outside, the wind began to pick up. The storm Miller had warned me about had finally crested the pass. The tent canvas snapped and fluttered, masking the quiet sobbing outside. It gave me a second to get a grip on myself. I feverishly cycled through the settings on the tablet. I needed more detail. I switched the mode to iron bow. Now the heat displayed in a gradient from purple to yellow and orange. The figure was painted in ominous tones. I saw that the creature was standing with its back to the wind, using its bulk to block the tent entrance. It was not just standing there. It was barricading me in. Think, Mark, think. I ordered myself. If I spoke, it would know I was awake. If I did not speak, it might decide to come in on its own. Tent fabric was no barrier for a creature of that size. Judging by the grid scale on the screen, the thing stood over 8 feet tall, and based on how deeply the snow compressed under its feet, it had to weigh 600 or 700 pounds. Daddy, my legs hurt. The voice came again. It sounded more demanding now, louder. I bit down on my fist to keep from screaming. This was torture, sadistic, sophisticated torture. I began to understand why the search teams had vanished without a trace here. This creature was not just hunting, it was fishing. And the bait was our love, our empathy. I tried to find a rational explanation. Maybe it was holding Leo. Maybe the child was standing in front of it, shielded by its massive body. I reached for the zoom controls on the screen. My fingers were trembling, the sensor barely responding to my cold touch. I punched in on the image. The quality of the FLIR X90 was phenomenal. I could make out the texture of the creature's fur or skin. It was covered in something like matted hair, but patches of bare skin poked through, glowing bright orange on the thermal feed. But Leo was not there. The creature was alone. "Open the door, please." The voice whined right at my ear level, just through the fabric. I scrambled backward to the far wall of the tent, gripping the flare gun. That was my only weapon. If it tore through the fabric, I'd shoot it in the face. But it did not attack. It just kept standing there. Outside, the storm had turned into a hellscape. The wind howled as if the mountains themselves were crumbling. The temperature inside the tent was plummeting. The heater battery had died half an hour ago, and I had not even noticed. The cold was creeping under my clothes, stiffening my movements. My choice to stay here now looked like a death sentence. I was trapped. Outside was lethal cold and a monster. Inside was a slow death by freezing. I decided to risk it. I had to test the thing's reaction. "Leo?" I asked softly, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Are you there?" The reaction was instant. On the thermal screen, the creature's head jerked. It heard me. "Yes, Dad, I am here. Come out to me." The voice changed. The notes of exhaustion vanished, replaced by a kind of hungry impatience. "Step away from the entrance, son," I said, gripping the flare gun until my knuckles turned white. "I cannot open it while you're standing so close." On the screen, the creature did not budge. It froze, as if analyzing my words. Come out to me," the voice repeated. But now the intonation was completely different. It was not the voice of a child anymore. It was a mechanical, hollow imitation, like someone had pressed play on a tape recorder. And at that moment, the worst happened. The tablet screen flickered. The battery indicator for the external camera flashed red, 5%. I had mere minutes of sight left. If the camera died, I would be blind in the dark with that thing. Panic seized me as I rummaged through my pack, searching for the backup power bank, praying the issue was the tablet and not the camera out in the cold. I fumbled a fuel canister, and it clattered loudly against the burner tank. The noise was deafening in the confined space. Outside, silence fell. Even the wind seemed to die down. Leo's voice stopped. I looked back at the screen. The creature was slowly leaning down. Its massive, shapeless head moved closer to the camera lens until it filled the entire display with a burning white blur. It knew I was watching. It was looking right into the camera. The last percentage points of battery life were melting away before my eyes. The image began to grain, but what I saw was enough to shatter my sanity. The creature was not just looking at the camera, it was studying it. A massive hand with long, knobby fingers, too human, only with too many joints, reached out toward the lens. But instead of crushing the device, the creature carefully, almost tenderly, wiped the glass with a claw. The picture sharpened. I punched the digital zoom to max, praying the tech would hold out for just one more minute. I focused on the creature's head, the source of the sound. I expected to see a maw, fangs, maybe a twisted human face. What I saw overturned everything I understood about biology and terror. The creature had no face in the traditional sense. Instead of eyes, there were deep, cold hollows radiating no heat, but the throat. The entire neck and lower jaw area glowed bright red on the thermal, shifting into blinding white. It was not just a heat source. It was a biological reactor. The skin on the throat was translucent and taut, like the membrane of a drum, and it was vibrating. "Dad." "Cold." The sound came from outside, but on the screen, I watched that membrane on the beast's throat oscillate at a frantic frequency. It did not have vocal cords. It had an organic sound system, a complex structure of muscle and cartilage shifting beneath the skin, mimicking human speech. It was not speaking. It was playing back. Suddenly, the creature straightened up. The membrane on its throat vibrated harder, the color shifting to crimson. "Mark, get out of there. You'll be dead by midnight." It was Miller's voice. The ranger I'd spoken to on the radio hours ago. The same timbre, the same intonation. Even the distortion of the radio static was mimicked perfectly. I dropped the tablet. It had heard my conversation over the radio. It had memorized it. The truth crashed down on me heavier than an avalanche. Leo was not nearby. Leo was not a captive. This creature did not take hostages. It was a mimic predator. It collected sounds. It harvested the voices of its victims and the people they loved to lure in new meat. If it was reproducing Leo's voice that accurately, that meant it had heard him for a long time, close up. "Help me." Leo's voice again, breaking into a shriek. I clamped my hands over my ears. It was a trap, the perfect trap for a parent. It knew I could not shoot at the source of that sound. It knew I would hesitate until the very last second. And in that second, it would strike. The tablet screen went black. The camera was dead. I was left in total darkness, broken only by the faint glow of my wristwatch. Outside, the sound of tearing fabric, not my tent. The sound was coming from my backpack, which I had foolishly left in the vestibule. I heard heavy breathing approaching the inner tent. Only a thin layer of nylon and a zipper remained between me and the thing. I realized I was going to die. Here, in this icy grave, I would become just another entry in this monster's library. My voice, screaming in pain, would be used to lure the next idiot who decided to play hero. But suddenly, cutting through the panic, a single thought broke through. A detail I had noticed on the thermal feed. The eyes, dark hollows. On the thermal feed, they were cold. Absolute black voids against the burning white of its face. Why would a living thing have cold eyes? Nature does not work that way. Unless they were a highly specialized, vulnerable organ, or unless they saw in a different spectrum. It had been looking right at the camera. It could see the infrared illuminator, invisible to the human eye. It navigated by heat. That was how it found me in the blizzard. I was a beacon in a frozen world. My heater, my body, my battery packs. I looked down at the marine flare gripped in my hand. It was a Solus-grade distress signal, designed to burn at nearly 2,000 degrees. To a thermal sensor, a burst like that is like staring into a nuclear detonation without safety glass. Instant blindness, sensor burnout. If this thing's eyes worked the way I thought they did, the fabric of the entrance began to slowly part. A claw, looking like a sharpened bone knife, silently sliced through the zipper track. A smell washed into the tent that I will never forget. A mixture of ozone, wet earth, and rotting meat. "Dad," the thing whispered. Now, with no barrier between us, I saw its silhouette against the faint moonlight filtering through the storm clouds. It was massive, hunched. Modded fur hung from it in rags. I did not wait. I did not scream. I just yanked the pull cord. A hiss, and the tent was flooded with blinding, furious red light. I squeezed my eyes shut, but even through my eyelids, the glare was searing. I shoved the burning flare right into the slit, straight into where the creature's face had to be. The shriek that followed was like nothing born of this earth. It was not Leo's voice or Miller's. It was the sound of an overloaded audio system, the screech of metal on glass, amplified 1,000 times over. The creature staggered back, snapping the tent's guy lines. I heard its heavy body crash into the snow, rolling and thrashing, crushing the underbrush. It was blind. Its sensors were fried. I did not wait to check the results. I threw myself out the back of the tent, which I'd sliced open with my knife a second earlier. The cold hit me like a sledgehammer, but adrenaline was boiling in my blood. I left everything. The $20,000 camera, the pack, the sleeping bag. I ran down the slope, sliding, falling, flaying my hands against rocks, hidden beneath the snow. The red glow of the flare faded behind me, illuminating a thrashing shadow on the plateau's edge. The thing roared, and in that roar, the voices of dozens of people mixed together. Men, women, children, a choir of the dead screaming in unison. I do not remember how I reached the zone boundary. I only remember the headlights of Miller's Jeep cutting through the snow. He'd ignored protocol and come looking for me when the comms went dead. They found me half frozen and delirious. 3 months have passed. I lost 2 toes on my left foot to frostbite and, most likely, whatever remained of my reputation. No one believed the story about the monster. Hallucinations induced by hypothermia and hypoxia, the doctor wrote. But I still had something. Cloud storage. Before it shut down, the FLIR X90 managed to burst upload the last packets of data via satellite link. The video was short and choppy, but the audio recorded perfectly. I'm sitting in my apartment now. A spring rain is falling outside the window, and my laptop is open in front of me. I listen to that fragment over and over again. Not the part where it mimics me or Miller. The very end. The things it muttered while I was prepping the flare. The sounds I missed in my panic. I put on my headphones, crank the volume, and filter out the wind noise. Leo's voice. Quiet, fading. Not a request to open the door, not a cry for help. It was a recording of the last minutes of my son's life. The creature had not just copied phrases, it had recorded his dying moments. Dad, I fell, my leg will not move. Someone is walking here. He smells like dirt. I want to go home. I want to sleep. A snap, a pause, and then a sound that turns my hair gray every time I hit the space bar. The crunch of bone and a wet, tearing noise, after which the recording cuts out. It did not kill him right away. It waited for him to speak. It listened. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I'm not buying a camera. Tomorrow, I'm buying dynamite, and I'm going back to Whispering Ridge. Because now I know this is not just a beast, it's an archive. And the only way to lay my son to rest is to burn that archive to the ground.